Slavonic people, throughout the centuries, are known for numerous and frequent migrations. Conditioned by political turmoil and military invasions, Slavonic people were mixed, rarely assimilating each other, as opposed to the result of the conquest and the early Middle Ages of Western nations and tribes. On the contrary, due to language differences rather small and mostly belonging to the Orthodox faith that connected these nations, there was an expansion among people and upgrade of the local culture and migrating Slavonic population. And today we find certain, somewhat forgotten expressions and the old, original songs of Slovakians in Slavonia. Among Zagorets, they claim that the original songs are Croatian. A special place in the relations between the two Slavonic nations, from the early Middle Ages to the present, the government between Russians and Serbs. The roots of friendship and mutual feelings of belonging date back to the distant past. Nevertheless, today the Serbian public knows little about the rich and complex historical cultural heritage that binds the two nations. This applies particularly to young people who do not know Russian literature, is not to the extent where it was present among earlier generations. Superficial knowledge about the great migration of the whites after the October Revolution and the participation of Soviet troops in the liberation of Yugoslavia were complemented with tendentious description of Russians as worn, rough mobsters in the Hollywood movies, but we rarely see and nobody talked about how much the Russian investors actually invested in the Serbian energy sector. Therefore, this mini-serial, The Secret of Slavonic Soul, aims to knock on the door of the rich history and cultural intermingling of Russians and Serbs. Serbs from the earliest days, especially after the Turkish occupation and the fall of Smederevo, began to inhabit the border areas of the Russian Empire. Traces of these settlements are almost impossible to document until the second half of the 16th century, when Serbs appeared in the ranks of the Cossack community. Serbian origin of certain Cossacks is evidenced by a significant amount of the surnames with the root of the Serb, Serbi, Serbinov, Serbinenko. Among Zaporozhian Cossacks, we meet surnames Dukic, Zoric, Radic, Simic. Some Serbs were elected to the highest governmental positions. To the progress of the Serbs in the Cossack ranks contributed their knowledge of the language, customs, and the Turkish military tactics and military skills forged in bloody clashes with the Turks on Serbian soil. Both military groups, Russian and Serbian, share the military way of life, the division of responsibilities and mutual economic dependence, characterized by the principle of electoral equality and solving important issues of the national level descriptions conferences. For both communities, the freedom was the most important, that is priceless and for which it is worth sacrificing. In the circumstances, the permanent threat of military invasion on Serbian soil, the most common form of resistance was chatting and guerrilla movements, which look very much like Free Cossack organizations of the time. Also, Serbian border guards on the fringes of the Habsburg Empire, which represented a sturdy bulwark in the defense of Europe against the Ottoman invasion, are very similar to Cossacks in the Caucasus border. Both communities were free of feudal duties and levies, to live as free men organized in a kind of self-government and military autonomy, which is the only duty and obligation of safeguarding the borders of empires. The Russian guarded and protected by Cossacks, and Serbs were protecting Austro-Hungarian borders. The good reputation of the Serbs in Russia contributed to the fact that the command of the new regiments that were formed during the reign of Empress Catherine the Great mainly granted to Serbian officers. Archive material shows that the Russian troops were commanded by 8 general lieutenants, 12 general majors, 4 brigadiers, 17 colonels, 42 lieutenant colonels, 37 majors, and many junior officers. There is evidence that Serbs over the centuries went into the general Cossack regiments. Among the noble military families of General Zaporozhye army regiments during Hetman from 1648 until 1746, there were several families of Serbian descent: Božić, Dmitrij Škorajić, Miloradović, Fyodorović. And from the second half of the 17th century, mainly Serbs were in the command of the regiment. Next to the military minister Milutin, Minister of Finances Knjažević, originally from Lika, Colonel Lazar Tekelija, Serb from Arad, a cavalry general George Arsenievich Emanuel from Vršac, who became famous as a Russian military commander in the war with Napoleon in the battle for the Caucasus. Adjutant General Jovan Dimitrievich Oklopzija, a native of the Serbian coast, famous Russian military leader Mikhail Kutuzov Golenišćev Smolensky was originally a Serb from the village of Sandora near Subotica in Bačka. When the Serbs under the leadership of Patriarch Arsenije III Čarnojević in 1690 arrived in Hungary, part of the Austrian Empire considered their stay in a foreign land as a temporary situation and hoped soon to return to their homeland. The hope of the return disappeared, and the Serbs were frustrated watching the East and dreaming of united big Russia. The evidence is Patriarch's letter that was sent in 1705 to the Russian Emperor Peter the Great, which is about Serbian nation living on the edge of starvation, drifting on the roads and looking for a new home. In the minds of Serbs who felt betrayed in the Habsburg monarchy, the great Orthodox Russia was the promised land, in which to find a new homeland and peace among brothers of the same faith. In May 1710, the border guards of Potisk and Pomorishka region sent Captain Bogdan Popović to the Russian Emperor, asking him not to forget to call them in the war with the Turks, saying, "We are also in the hurry to serve our Orthodox Emperor." This was after the famous manifesto of February 22nd in 1710 that was issued by an Emperor Peter because of break of peace done by Sultan Ahmed. That was also the first public appearance of Russia as a protector of Christians in the Balkans. The one of the most prominent Serbs of that time in Russia was Sava Vladislavich Raguzinski, born in Jesenik near Gatsko in Herzegovina. He was advisor to Emperor Peter the Great, a diplomat in the service of the Russian Empire, the founder of the intelligence, and the man who discovered China and edited the Russian border. He was also a traveler, polyglot, and a great benefactor of the church. For a quarter of a century, he will be involved in all the important events of the Russian Empire. He concluded a military alliance with the ruling princess of Moldova in Iasi, peace with the Sultan on the Prut, concorded with the Pope in Rome, a pact of friendship, and the final demarcation, China and Russia with the Chinese Pope in Rome, a pact of friendship, and the final demarcation, Emperor in Beijing. But Vladislavich was the first Serb who was, by the late 17th century, loved and embraced by Russia and won trust of the Emperor Peter the Great for the liberation of Serbs and Balkans. This was written by his cousin, writer and diplomat of that time, Sir Jovan Dujic. Important role in raising the reputation of Serbian officers played also Mihailo Miloradović. This noble Russian general is particularly emphasized in Napoleonic wars. He served under the command of Suvorov in the war against Turkey and Poland. He pointed out particularly in the war in Italy and Switzerland in 1799. In the rank of lieutenant colonel, he was promoted in 1805 for his merits in the Battle of Austerlitz under the command of Kutuzov. During Napoleon's invasion of Russia was one of the most prominent and most successful Russian generals at the Battle of Borodino. Directly led the attack at the Battle of Yazma, which sealed the defeat of the French. Mihailo was at the Battle of Leipzig, where he led the Russian-Prussian Corps, and during 1814 he commanded the Allied contingent in the Netherlands. By the decree of Emperor Alexander I Romanov in 1813, he received the title of Count of Hereditary in 1818. He was appointed Governor-General of St. Petersburg. At one time, he was considered the most awarded active officer of the Imperial Russian Army. Before Peter the Great went with the army to the southern border as a prelude to the famous Prutsky quest, he issued an imperial decree sent to the Christian people in the Balkans by which he invited them to fight against Turkey. A little later, Peter the Great to Jovan Albanese, whom Zacharias Orfelin claimed that he was a Serb born in Podgorica, to serve call mention in 1723 that he should, in Habsburg monarchy among Serbs, recruit soldiers for several hussar regiments. In 2 years' time, around 1,000 men from Trust, capable for war, emigrated to Russia. Settled in Belarus, a few years later, Empress Anna formed Serbian Hussar Regiment to participate in an elite unit in the war against Persia. Empress Anna follows the path of the great predecessor, seeking to gradually come to the Caspian and Black Sea, which quickly led to a new war with Turkey. Therefore, the Empress, at the proposal of Count Weisbach, again urges Serbs from Hungary to relocate to Russia to strengthen military personnel. Serbs soon began to arrive in large numbers emperors, and among them were the most prominent Serbian families in the Habsburg Empire. And the man with highest reputation among them was Peter Tekelija. He arrived as a lieutenant, and from all submitted Serbs, he built the largest military career. After the war, many merits and success in commanding the elite units of the Russian army was promoted to the rank of field marshal. Among Serbs who were in the highest positions in the Russian state and society, especially the prominent place occupied by General Simeon Zoric. He belongs to the second generation of Serbian immigrants in Russia. He was born in 1742, grew up in Russia, where he attended the prestigious Russian military school. He was promoted to the rank of general and became a favorite of the Empress Catherine the Great, and through him she got introduced with Serbs and enchanted with Serbia. He joined and participated in a one-year war with the Turks, in which he showed great bravery and the courage and the skill of commanding. For that, he was recommended for the top on Russian military hierarchy. Half of the 18th century was the time of the biggest arrival of Serbian refugees from the territory of the Austro-Hungarian, mostly border guards. Still, it was merely a precursor to the whole army that our nation has given Russia. To be continued.